This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into another edition of the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and we are joining you discussing Pete Alonso, amongst some other things, as well as who might replace him if he doesn't decide to stay. This is a place we've been before.
Yeah, it's time for opt-outs. It's time for free agency. It's time for the whole 9 yards. We've come full circle back around from last year to the great Pete debate. You know what I mean? Are the Mets going to keep Pete Alonso, or is he going to finally take a walk? Obviously, the day after the World Series ended last week, Alonso officially opted out of his deal. That obviously sees him forego the 1 year, $24 million that was left on that. Every single Mets fan knew that was coming.
Yes, no doubt about it. Pete Alonso will be 31 in December. He has averaged 42 home runs throughout his career. He won his first Silver Slugger award, and last season he was batting .272 with 126 RBI. This is an interesting discussion.
I mean, yeah, I think that he posted career high marks in a lot of places. He led the NL in doubles. He certainly had the bounce back year that he needed for what he wants to get paid. At the same time, I don't know if the market is going to bear what he wants it to bear. It did not last year, but what I will say is he did everything in his power to have one of the best seasons of his career to put himself in a good position. His OPS was the third best, career high marks in both hard hit, sweet spot balls. He even improved his strikeout rate, which has been an issue for him, dropped it to a 3-year low. So it was the major bounce back year that he was looking for. You can't argue with 126 RBIs.
No, you truly can't. Nothing that we can even say at this table. So what will the market look like? I think that's one of the questions that we're trying to answer here. Ashley puts down generally not kind to aging, semi-unathletic, power-hitting right-handed first baseman. Take that as you will. But I understand what you're talking about. Since winter 2019, 4 first basemen have signed a contract for 5 years or longer, and only one of those was as a free agent. The others were the extensions, including Vladdy Daddy and the like.
Yes, some interesting research behind this. Like you just said, only 4 first basemen have signed a contract for 5 years or longer. Only one was at a free agent. Vlad, Matt Olson, Evan White, all of those were extensions. And then free agency-wise, the exception was Freddie Freeman. The Dodgers gave him a 5-year deal worth $162 million. But I don't think anyone's out here saying that Pete Alonso is like a better hitter than Freddie Freeman.
This is going to be a tough situation for Alonso either way. I think there are, of course, a lot of factors to consider. I mean, I know that this is not something that probably sports podcasters think about all the time, but I frequently think about the fact that he has even like a baby on the way. If not, he hasn't had his baby yet, right? But like on the way. Pretty sure his wife is pregnant. He has. Okay, so there's like a young new child involved. The wife is involved. What's going to happen? Where is he going to go? What have the Mets said? That's another question we wanted to talk about today. And what did you find as far as David Stearns and some of these guys?
I mean, David Stearns is walking the walk and he's talking the talk, right? When he had his post-season press conference right after the Mets season ended, before the playoffs, he said, Pete is a great Met. He had a fantastic year. I said this last year and it worked out. I'd love to have Pete back, and we'll see where the offseason goes. While David Stearns might be up there saying that, as a Mets fan, you know a couple of things here. You know that, number one, Pete Alonso does not really fit the type of player that David Stearns likes to prioritize. Number two, you also know what went down last offseason, and it wasn't particularly pretty, even though Alonso ended up returning. It took until February to get him to re-sign. Everybody knew at the time that was a deal that he was going to opt out of after. It was a Band-Aid, right? Steve Cohen even publicly came out and said that he was a little bit unhappy with how things went down. He said that getting Juan Soto was easier than negotiating with Alonso's camp. He said that maybe the Mets were ready to proceed without Pete. I'm just, with all that in context, with all that in hindsight, all of that will play a role in how things go down this year with Alonso and Scott Boras and the New York Mets.
I'm going to say it. That answer is feeling a little non-committal. We'll see where the offseason goes. I'd love to be your girlfriend. Let's just see how the winter goes, and then we'll decide if we want to put a label on it. Okay, all right. I don't know about it. I feel as though, like you said, the biggest piece to me, actually maybe there's 2 biggest pieces. Number one, David Stearns and the fact that I really kind of feel like he has this cheap mindset, quite honestly.
Yeah.
That's what we have discovered over how long he's been with the Mets. And additionally, he's not the kind of player that David Stearns normally goes for. You're right. He doesn't fit that mold in really a few ways here. So I don't know. I think that there are some things we might never know about why those negotiations were so lengthy and grueling last offseason. But I can't sit here and earnestly tell you that I think this time around it's going to be nice and easy unless they truly feel like they learned something from it.
I mean, I think there's a couple sides to this coin. I think that Pete thinks he's worth more than he is. To be honest with you, I 100% believe in my heart that he wishes he could have back 7 years and $158 million, which was the proposed extension that he wasn't interested in.
Remember that?
2 years ago. Hey, Pete, you interested in 7 years for 158? I bet you are.
Oh my God.
In November of 2025. I think thinks he's worth more than he is, but at the same time, he is worth something. As Keith Hernandez says, you don't just easily replace, 40 home runs a year and 125 RBIs in your lineup, in particular when you have a guy like Juan Soto who needs protection in that lineup. Think about everything went off the rails for the Mets this year, but then think about if they didn't have Alonso in that lineup to protect Soto at all. Mark Vientos is your Alonso protection. And we'll get into that in a minute with who the Mets might replace him with. But on the David Stearns token, I think that it's interesting because this is one of the first players, probably the first player, that David Stearns has had in his tenure as president of baseball operations for the Mets. Legacy does matter here. Not to every Mets fan, but to some. Alonso became the all-time leading home run leader of the franchise this past season. He's a great Met. That's what Stearns said. Everybody knows that. Probably fan favorite player of many. The whole 9 yards, right? Mm-hmm. Come up, spent his whole career with the Mets, homegrown. I guess what I'm saying is David Stearns is going to have to make a business decision because baseball is a business, but he also, I guess, has to consider the legacy side of things. On the flip side of that coin, Pete Alonso has to consider the legacy side of things, right? Pete Alonso, okay, you see plenty of guys go and pick a second team. And does Pete Alonso want to be a historically great Met, or does he want to be a guy that splits his career between two teams at the age of 31? I don't know how much that matters to anybody.
I mean, I also think it matters what the options are. I think if you are on the New York Mets, you understand the fact that last year didn't go the way that you wanted it to, but I still truly in my heart of hearts believe that this is a team that could and should have been a playoff team, that could and potentially will win a World Series in the next 5 years. I think that you have to see what the other options are and what you want your legacy to be in that regard, because New York City, that's a big time market. And he's somebody who I believe is built for that. I don't know if you want to go from New York City to a smaller market team. He doesn't really strike me as that kind of dude either. So I think that's something to consider. Last year, it took them until February to work this deal out. I do think that's important context. I don't know if you remember this, but last year we were sitting at this table. I got an Alonso jersey as a present, and by the time that Alonso made this deal, it was like too late to return it.
Yeah.
I would have lost out on some money if he hadn't resigned. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was too long. So I think
it was almost spring training.
I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
I still have that Alonso jersey now. It's a really great jersey.
Do.
It's the black one. It's everyone's favorite.
Fantastic.
The point being, I think that if you're Pete Alonso, the way that these two sides are going to be able to get to a deal faster is that they both had to take something away from the way that last year went. Pete Alonso might have to realize that the days of that amazing great 7-year extension are over. If you wanted that, you should have taken it then. And you have to kind of understand and maybe reevaluate your expectations.
Well, here's the other thing. Change doesn't happen unless change happens.
Oh.
Now, I'm not going to give my personal opinion on this until I say this in a minute, but Pat Ragazzo, who's a Mets insider for Sports Illustrated, had an interesting little report this week. He said, according to a rival NL scout, the Mets recognize that their clubhouse is in need of a culture shift following last season's slow collapse. The expectation is that the Mets will float utility man Jeff McNeil on the trade market and let franchise cornerstone first baseman Pete Alonso walk in free agency unless he takes a team-friendly deal. Bob Nightingale, USA Today, also reported similar today that the expectation is that Alonso will not be back with the Mets. That's what baseball people, insiders, GMs are anticipating right now. Do I think Pete Alonso is interested in a team-friendly deal? No. I think Pete Alonso is interested in the payday of his career because he's in somewhat of a rare spot right now, which is that his big-time payday, his big moneymaker contract is coming at the age of 31 due to a few factors. He's a little later to that than some guys in their prime. I think Pete Alonso wants his money. I'm going to say it right now. I think the Mets want to shake things up. You can't keep trotting the same lineup out there year after year and expect different results when you're falling short. I do not think Pete Alonso will be back with the Mets.
Interesting.
I don't.
Okay. And I mean, listen, if that's the way that you feel, then where do you think that he's going to end up? Or where do you think he could go?
Well, that's the other thing, right? Pete Alonso might also get backed into a corner if he doesn't like the market and be forced to accept a team-friendly deal. But if he doesn't, I mean, the Yankees, they've got Rice, maybe the Padres, the Giants have the whole Devers thing. I could see the Red Sox. That's another somewhat big market team, right?
Yep.
They're really in the market for like a power-hitting, middle-of-the-lineup slugger type guy. He would fit their mold. I don't know, though. It's going to depend. I think it's going to depend, as I'm continuing to say, how much Alonso prioritizes New York and all this.
It would be deeply hard to see him walk and go to the Yankees. I'm not going to lie. That's kind of my worst nightmare.
That would hurt me.
But listen, if it meant doing that, they shake up the roster and then win a World Series, kind of who gives an F? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, not cursing as much. They said we couldn't do it. But truly, like, I do think that would kind of change things for me. And also, if he really wouldn't be willing, at least to a certain degree, to take a team-friendly deal, then a part of me is like, well, what do you expect? I mean, you even look at a guy like Josh Allen. He took like a little pay cut on his deal that was like millions of dollars.
Hello?
You know what I mean?
For the
Like,
Knicks?
there are people who do that because they understand that the team is greater than themselves. If he's not the kind of guy who can recognize that to a certain degree, me saying that as someone who has never ever been in that situation and doesn't make as much money, but sincerely, if it meant that, like, when I'm just saying, this is just a perspective to consider. It is his big payday coming, but it's not like he is broke and can't afford to pay the bills.
No.
Like, it's not like he couldn't take a team-friendly deal and still have a lucrative, lavish life and lifestyle. So if that's really something you want, then you have to consider and prioritize what are other things that matter to you besides the money. Do you care about your legacy? Do you care about winning? Do you care about your teammates? Do you care about culture? And is he a part of the culture that's actually contributing to it? Is he making the culture better? If he's not, then you should let him walk.
I'm putting my money on Pete not prioritizing his Mets legacy or his legacy in New York or whatever you want to call it, because he, at a few points here, hasn't been that leader in the Mets clubhouse. To a degree, right? He's one of the voices in the room, but Francisco Lindor has taken that role long ago. You've seen other guys step up and take that role, even some of the younger guys. I do think if the Mets are looking for a culture shift, which I would welcome with open arms at this point after what happened last year, I do think that Alonso and McNeil are the guys in that room that don't necessarily fit the bill. I think we've heard that. We've seen that with our own eyes to some degree when we went there last year. And I think that makes sense. I think that I'm not saying Alonso's like a clubhouse cancer, a problem. No, none of that.
No.
But he's just not really interested in that number one guy, always step up when the cameras are there. I mean, I think Brandon Nimmo does a better job of that to some degree.
Completely. Brandon Nimmo is the epitome of what I would want to be a New York Met. Like, from a personality standpoint, I don't think it gets any better than Nimmo and Lindor. Like, we've even discussed this, but like, even Soto, I understand that to an extent he's the face of the franchise as the star, but he doesn't have like that deeply rooted New York Met personality that I feel like I know and love. To me, that's safe for guys like Lindor and guys like Nimmo.
Yep.
Fun, friendly, good guys, the whole 9 yards. Not to say that the other guys aren't. It's just there's a different kind of personality vibe you get from them. So I agree. Listen, I'm fine at this point with Alonso walking. I think that you have to do one or two big things here. You need big changes based on the results that you got last year, considering how much talent there was. I mean, horrifically fell short. So why not change a couple things up to see if you can get success in a different way, right? That would be the next thing that you do if you're not going to like fire Mendoza, and they're not. So you had to do something big, I think, here to the lineup, to the roster, etc.
Do you think he'll be back? What's your prediction?
I guess my prediction on that would probably also be no. I don't think that Stearns wants to do that. And I think even last year they were kind of iffy about it. But like you said, the one thing that's stopping me is it's not like he had a mediocre year or even a good year last year. It was really like great. So I guess we'll see. That could go either way, right? It could mean the Mets should want him more. It could mean that there's going to be a better market out there for him. In any case, I'm wishing him luck. If he doesn't stay, though, then I think it becomes, well, who are you replacing him with? Because knowing Mets fans in the lineup, it needs to be someone substantial.
I am significantly less worried about who's going to play first base. I think the Mets could slot Vientos over there. They could go get to... I'm really not that concerned about who's going to play first. I'm way more concerned about who takes that spot in the lineup and who protects Juan Soto and the whole 9 yards. I think the Mets have a few options at first, at DH. They can move some pieces around. And honestly, moving Vientos to first would eliminate the whole Vientos-Brett Beatty debacle at third base. How many years are we going to deal with that? You know what I mean? So I think there's like a real like top three here. There's obviously a few free agents on the market this year, but you look at Kyle Schwarber coming off the Phillies, Cody Bellinger, Yankees, and Kyle Tucker with the Cubs. That feels like the three really big. If the Mets don't re-sign Alonso, I do expect them to make a sizable move to replace that bat, because I do not think David Stearns is dumb enough to think that you can just proceed forward with the pieces that you have. I guess we can kind of go through them. Schwarber, obviously Phillies. He's going to be 33 next year, more of a DH at this point, can kind of play the outfield as well. Obviously, he's going to pretty much be the 2025 NL MVP runner-up. Sorry, Soto, but that feels inevitable. Last year, 56 home runs, 132 RBI. But I see a few issues with Schwarber. Schwarber's not my first pick, to be honest with you.
Why not?
He's going to be 33. He gives you a DH, which a valuable DH can help a lineup. I'm not disputing that, but he doesn't really help you defensively, athletically, the whole 9 yards. I mean, he strikes out a ton. He doesn't run well. He's obviously coming off of his best season in probably the entirety of that 5-6 years that he spent in Philadelphia on that contract. It kind of feels like Schwarber has the leverage for some reason, at least with Philly. I think fans in Philadelphia love him. I think that they want him back. Phillies hitting coach Kevin Long had an interesting quote. He said, what does it come down to? What's his market value? And are we willing to give him his market value? I think the answer is yes to that. And when you put all of that into the equation, I think there's a strong chance that Kyle comes back. I think it'd be devastating to this organization and this fan base and everybody involved if he wasn't a Philly. So we'll see where it ends up, but I feel very confident he'll be back. It feels like the Phillies need him more than he needs the Phillies. And honestly, I'm really not that interested in what he brings to the table when you consider some of the other options out there.
Well, then let me ask you a question. Who is your first choice and why?
Well, okay, you can't dispute Kyle Tucker is the biggest free agent on the market this winter, right? Nobody's disputing that. I'll go back to Bellinger in a minute, but the Cubs could also make a play to get Tucker back. He's 29. He's been playing right field. The problem there for the Mets is that either then Soto or him has to move to left, but they'd have to work that out amongst themselves. 20 or more home runs in each of his last 4 seasons. I mean, left-handed power bat, that's rare, that's valuable. He could get in the $400 or $500 million range. Now, when you think about that and cap space and what the Mets did last year with Soto, are the Mets going to be in the market for another $400 or $500 million contract? I honestly don't know. But he's a guy who's been one of the best hitters in baseball over the past few years, right? I mean, he sort of dealt with that hand injury, the fracture in his hand, limited his production somewhat last year. 22 home runs, 73 RBIs. He's also been linked to a lot of other teams that want another lineup piece. The Dodgers, the Blue Jays, the Giants. John Heyman predicted he'll go to the Dodgers, which is interesting because John Heyman does have a pulse on those things. But if the Dodgers were to sign him, they'd have to move Teoscar Hernandez to left field. So there would be some moving pieces no matter where he goes. I think if you're the Mets, you at least have to make a play for him.
I understand why you feel that way. You also have Cody Bellinger written down here, Yankees. So at least in one way there would be a swap if it came to that. But there are some other things that I think stand out as interesting about Bellinger as well.
29 home runs, 98 RBIs last year was pretty much his best year actually since that MVP season when he was on the Dodgers in 2019. I know Dodgers fans are quite familiar with Cody Bellinger, if all you guys are listening. It's hard to believe Bellinger is only 30, right? 2-time All-Star, has won a World Series. He's a great defender in the outfield, and he can play first base, which if you're the Mets trying to replace Alonso, might be valuable to you. I think Bellinger's an attractive option and would be cheaper than Tucker for sure. But it depends on what the Mets are prioritizing here. David Stearns has said he's prioritizing defense. Well, then Bellinger might fit your mold.
Not to mention, feels like the Mets prioritize the cheap option. Like I feel
the
like
scrap
they,
heap.
Yes, the scrap heap. And I feel like I look at Bellinger and I think he kind of fits the mold of what it is that Stearns is looking for. I do find it interesting to say that Stearns is prioritizing defense, though. What do you think about that? Do you have thoughts on that?
I think that's great. I was happy to hear him say that after this season. I think when you looked at the Mets last year, again, the obvious issues, runners in scoring positions, starting pitching. But beyond that, you just need to get more athletic. You need to get more competitive defensively. You need to do the little things well, right? You need to run the bases better. Like, there's a lot that goes into winning a championship, repeating as champions like the Dodgers did. So Consistency. So I was happy to hear all of that. Obviously, there's some other free agents out there on the market this cycle. I mean, Bo Bichette's going to be looking for a landing spot, Alex Bregman. So there's a few options. But I will say that maybe my prediction is Bellinger, but I would love Kyle Tucker in the middle of my lineup. Who wouldn't? I mean,
Right. Understood. Yeah, I mean, I guess based on what the Mets have been saying, who they're looking for, it does kind of feel like Bellinger would make the most sense. But honestly, I actually happen to like Schwarber. I actually do think that Schwarber would be an interesting option, particularly because not to say, like, I understand that Stearns said that he's prioritizing defense, and I totally understand why. I also get it that Schwarber is a little bit on the older side. But I feel like the idea of protecting Soto in the lineup, the idea of having somebody who is really hitting quite a few home runs each season feels the most valuable to me when you're losing out on a guy like Pete Alonso. There was really a lot he did in that lineup, even beyond the way that he hit, that I think is important. And I think that Schwarber, even personality-wise, would probably be a good fit as a Met. And I wouldn't say that about a lot of Phillies, but I actually do think that with him, he has the right kind of personality to be here. I envision him as somebody who lifts the culture up instead of prohibiting it from growing in any way. And I think he's coming off an amazing season. Plus, I was going to say about the defensive point, I do think that at some point you have to figure out, is Mark Vientos staying with this organization or not? And it does, if you do want him, it opens up a space for him to be there. And he most certainly could play first base. I actually felt like he was doing a decent job with that. So depending on the way that he's able to hit, I actually sort of like the idea of being able to hold on to him as somebody who I still believe has value and could be valuable on this team, despite not having, the year that maybe we all anticipated he would last season.
Yeah, Vientos had a sophomore slump, but I'm not ready to punt on Vientos yet.
Right?
I just want to say that.
And if we're not ready to punt, then let's use him.
Right. Schwarber, yeah, I said it. Schwarber is not my preferred option, but at the same time, I mean, will I rejoice if Philly fans are upset about losing Kyle Schwarber and he, has a one-way ticket to New York? Yeah, I will.
Not to mention with any of these teams, but especially like just the Yankees from like a ha-ha standpoint, but the Phillies from an actual NL standpoint. If you sign Schwarber, you take him away from Philly, which is obviously just another big piece that matters,
Yep.
All right, in any case, anything else that you would want to say about Pete Alonso, what you think he should do here, or strategies for him moving forward? And then we're going to talk about one Dodgers piece before we get out of here.
No, I do not think he'll be back, and I think maybe that's for the best. At the same time, it would not shock me because we're just going to have to see how the market shakes out, I think. But I don't think he's proven to be, the team-friendly, team-first type of guy that maybe they should be prioritizing when you look at a team like the Dodgers and how much success they had because of that clubhouse culture,
Totally. I agree with that. Yeah, I think the culture is a big piece here, probably bigger than a lot of people might even know or realize. But I think if you watched 162 or close to it, regular season games of Mets baseball last year, you understood the fact that something was not quite right.
Right.
And we're going to figure out what it is.
Yep.
All right, on to the Dodgers. Will the Dodgers re-sign Miggy Ro? That is the question that we are proposing to you all now. What do you think? What do you want? He will be 37 in February, so that's obviously something to consider. He had a gigantic moment, probably the biggest of his entire career, in the World Series, hitting a game-tying home run in the top of the ninth in Game 7. Doesn't get much better than that. Mind you, before that, pretty sure that Joe Davis said he hadn't hit a home run since like September. It wasn't like there was a reason why everyone was like, of all the guys, this is the hero, ?
Yeah.
This wasn't the guy anybody expected to do that, and he did. But obviously, there were some other offensive production issues there.
Yeah, he said last year that he planned on retiring after one more season. He is a free agent now. He spent, parts of 3 seasons here with the Dodgers recently. He's a guy that started his career actually with the Dodger organization, then kind of bounced around. But in the past few years, he has had that limited off-the-bench utility role, right? An interesting little tidbit here. He said that after he hit that home run, Shohei Ohtani came back to the dugout and said, Miggy, you can't retire next year. You're playing with me for 10 more years. Obviously, the Dodgers have bigger problems here besides Miguel Rojas. He's like a league average guy. He's a utility guy. But at the same time, he does have a valuable glove, defensive replacement wise, in the middle infield. He's a guy that you can bring in late into games, sort of known for his clutch moments to a degree. I'm interested to hear what Dodger fans have to say about whether or not they would like to have him back in a year that maybe will be his last in the major leagues. So Miguel Rojas, yes or no, Dodgers fans? And also on any of the names that we tossed out there for the Mets replacing Pete Alonso, like I said, the Dodgers, are going to be a player for Kyle Tucker. So let me know what you think about any of those free agents for the Dodgers.
That quote really warms my heart.
With Ohtani?
Yes.
Yeah.
The fact that he would say that, all I know is whatever they are building over there in LA, That's the kind of culture that I'm wanting for the Mets. I know it's not going to be the exact same. I feel like people on the West Coast are probably like nicer. I feel like Northeast people have kind of a bite.
Yeah.
But I want to feel this level of love that the teammates all have for one another. And I don't know if top to bottom I felt that.
Not last year.
Not last year. Something was just off. I don't know what was off, but I'm still thinking about it.
But it also shows you that prioritizing that 2024, Jose Iglesias, it was all there in 2024 for the Mets. So I think that's another thing David Stearns has to think about, right, heading into next year.
I totally agree. Be sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. It really helps us out when you do that, and we really, really appreciate all the support you guys have been giving us. I mean, at this point, I want to check just to be sure, but I think it's something like we might even be up to like 13,000 subscribers. Let me see. Nearly 13,000 subscribers. So that's a big deal for us. Thank you so much for doing that. We will see you back here when the next big thing happens. Have a great week.